everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Terry Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and today I want to talk about some of the aspects in your natal chart that support your life, support you living a happy and fulfilled life. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some planetary conversations in your natal chart, but what I want to focus in on is the elements and the modalities that these planets are interacting in, because I think that is a nuance that is often overlooked and yet has a tremendous amount of influence in how we behave, how we think, and how we believe in ourselves. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sun in a trine to the moon. This is considered an extremely favorable aspect in your natal chart. It means that you are comfortable in your skin. You're comfortable in how you project yourself out into the world. You have enough emotional IQ to be aware of your sun's projection. There is a natural flow when we're talking about a trine because the planets that live in a trine are in the same element. They're either in fire, water, air, or earth. Now, this is where it gets, I think, a little bit interesting because as I'm recording this today, the sun is in Cancer, but the moon is in Scorpio. So this is supportive if a child is born today. But the difference is that moon in Scorpio is in a fixed sign. So this fixed energy is a little bit of a drag. It's a little bit of a pull because while there's a comfortableness in my skin, there can also be a stubbornness in not wanting to shift. If the sun and the moon were in, let's say the sun was in Cancer and the moon was in Pisces, this is going to act out extremely different, as is Pisces in a trine to Scorpio. Because the Scorpio energy is very powerful, and the Pisces energy is very behind the scenes, very much a supporting player. So while these are positive aspects, they still present challenges. So I think that's an important nuance. When we're looking at the moon in harmony with Venus, either in a trine or in a sextile, this is also kind of an interesting dynamic. When the moon is in trine with Venus, you're very partnership oriented. You're very much wanting to, you sort of have this natural warmth and feeling that interacting with others is safe. The trine, again, we're looking at the subtleties between where is that trine? Is Venus in a fixed sign? Is Venus in a mutable sign? Wherever the moon is, and the moon is, I think, the most important planet in the whole natal chart, because how you feel about something indicates how you're going to take action and what you think about. So when we're looking at the moon and Venus being in a trine, let's use the fire element now. Let's say Venus is in a trine with Venus is in Aries and the sun or the moon is in Leo. The Venus in Aries is considered in detriment, okay? The moon in Leo, that's an interesting dynamic because while there's no, I mean, it's in the sign of its partnership, meaning if we look at the sun and the moon as a partner, okay, as a couple, then it's in the home of its partner. The moon in Leo is going to be fixed. It's going to imprint early in life, and it's going to be emotionally sort of stuck. I'm going to say that because especially when the moon is in a fixed sign, it doesn't shift easily. Now, Venus in detriment, while these two planets are in a positive conversation, Venus's detriment in Aries, where the feminine is not considered in favor in the bold energy of Mars, at the same time, in this particular example, Venus is in the house of her partner, Mars, and the moon is in the house of its partner, the sun. So there's an adjustment period for you. There's a period where you will be learning how to emote, how to be a leader, how to come from your heart, and how to stand in adventure of your life. But there could be a wobble in the beginning. Maybe you'll be perceived as too fiery. Maybe could potentially be perceived as too bold in how you act. But that's where I think it still is, there's favor, because as you age, those more reactive dynamics of youth season and they become softer. So I really want to encourage you again to look at the element and the modality of how your planets are interacting. If there's a sextile, I think this is in some ways sometimes more favorable because the sextile always supports each other. The earth element is always supported by water. I suppose there could be a flood if you have a stellium in water, but at the same time, the earth will dry up if it doesn't get the proper amount of water, and a fire has a very difficult time sustaining itself without the air element. The sextiles require an activation, an awareness from you to put intention, thought, emotion, and action into that sextile. With Jupiter and the sun, we see the potentials to feel meaningful in life, to feel there are endless possibilities. I think of these five dynamics I'm talking about, this one has the most precarious journey because it could be extremely expansive, extremely fruitful. There could be much material bounty depending upon where and what elements and modalities they're in, but there is a slippery slope of feeling entitled, feeling as if your birthright is to stand in the spotlight and to influence others. And this is, while this is a beautiful dynamic, the rest of your chart will indicate how that plays out in the form of leadership and responsibility, because there really is a lot of awareness that is required with this favorable dynamic. Because again, with Jupiter's expansion and with Jupiter's diversity and with Jupiter's wealth and benefit and the sun with its leadership, it could be just a little hard in the beginning. People tell you you're too full of yourself. People will be like, slow your roll. Who do you think you are? And as we move into more technological ages, a lot of us are going to discover exactly who we are. We are co-creators, and we are not meant to dumb down, but we are not meant to overpower either. So if you have a Sun, Jupiter trine that involves Scorpio or any of the more intense energies, I think Aquarius is another intense energy, then you're going to have to soften and manage those things through your awareness. We see Venus and Jupiter are considered very good friends. Jupiter co-rules Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So there is this very dreamy dynamic here. True joy comes from this aspect, the trines, the sextiles. I'm not putting in conjunctions. I'm just focusing in on trines and sextiles because conjunctions can work two ways as well. But what I want to talk about here with Jupiter and Venus is that joy comes more naturally and easily, and at the same time, I think that this aspect really capitalizes on your talents, your skills, your voice, your opinion, your willingness to build upon your history and where you've been. I think that this also, there's a bit of a delayed feeling here because when I look at this aspect in a natal chart, I always feel like the beginning of life is about a lot of discovery and a lot of diversity, sort of kind of tasting a little bit of the possibilities. And then as you season in life, again, depending upon your chart and how it's laid out, then you can fall into your lane of creativity, of entrepreneurship, of where you want to expand. I also think that Venus trine and sextile Jupiter really is a signature for wealth, even regardless of the house that it's in. I think it's always going to bring material abundance, but it just may be delayed sometimes. And our final dynamic, which is interesting, is Saturn and the moon. Saturn and the moon is a polarizing dynamic because in square opposition or in conjunction, it is honestly very difficult. But in a trine or in a sextile, Saturn and the moon seasons over time, and it becomes emotional maturity and an emotional IQ, and it really becomes the wise elder, the one who takes history, and rather than repeating history, it builds upon history. When we look at Saturn in trine to the moon, we're looking at an ability to traverse challenging dynamics and to gain reward from them. We also see a lot of maternal leadership, a lot of, as this aspect ages, it becomes, whether you, regardless of your gender, your physical gender, you will represent a sense of stability, emotional stability for others. Again, I want to emphasize that the elements, if Saturn is in Capricorn and the moon is in Taurus, while this is favorable, it's a slow process. It is one that the beginning chapters and the beginning experiences of life can be not startling like unexpected, but startlingly. I guess how I want to phrase it is that in the beginning, you may not see the reward. It may actually feel like, well, doesn't feel like a fun aspect at all, but it gains that wisdom over time. It gains that maturity, it gains the leadership, and therefore then garnishes the reward. Again, sextiles must be activated. They can't really come into their full blossom without a certain awareness. So when we're looking at our natal chart, and this is how I want to summarize this video, when you're looking at the favorable aspects, it's very important, especially in the trines, to see where your fixed energy lies and how that in some ways can be a stumbling block to unlocking the trine's true potential. Because again, the chart is not a vacuum, and these dynamics that I've spoken of in and of themselves in isolation do not guarantee a happy life. Everything within the chart is sort of a map, and in each dynamic, we get a choice. We participate in that co-creation. So if you have these elements in your chart, you definitely have the potential for living with more ease, with more material resources, with more confidence in who and what you are. And yet at the same time, you will be required to step into that energy. It will not be bestowed upon you. It's not like a fairy godmother comes and dings you on the head with her wand. It's more as if life is saying that you have chosen a path of representation where you may walk through challenges, but as how you traverse those challenges and how you allow yourself to continue to expand and grow, that's where the real beauty lies. So I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, please like, please subscribe, please share, and I'll be coming back with a video on the 5 most challenging dynamics in your birth chart. See you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.